Today we're looking into a pretty hype matchup between the strongest servant and the strongest sorcerer. So I wanted to do this matchup simply because I haven't talked about Fate in a pretty long time, and it's one of my favorite series, though I will say this matchup has a few stipulations on the Fate side of things. For one, I'm only going to be counting older works for Nasu, meaning 2012 and before. This is mostly because a lot of works afterwards, including Apocrypha, Grand Order, and so on, tend to have changed how Nasu views the series, and the scaling for it gets completely different. Obviously, if you put something like extra CCC Gil against, Gojo, this isn't really going to be much of a fight, and I wanted to make it as fun and as interesting as possible. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go over both character stats and see who would win most often in a battle. First, let's talk about the king of heroes himself and the strongest servant in the 5th Holy Grail War, Gilgamesh. It's been stated numerous times by the author as well as the story itself that Gilgamesh is the greatest heroic spirit in the Holy Grail War. Now, servant scaling has, a bit of controversy where most people don't really know where to put these characters. I've seen them as low as building level, and some people put them as high as complex multiversal. So, where do the original servants actually scale from Stay Night and Fate Zero? However, we do have an author's note about how strong servants are at this point in the series. In it, he says they would take a servant numerous noble phantasm uses to destroy a city, and while they're not as strong as humanity's highest end weapons, they're certainly stronger than most conventional weapons. This gives us a pretty good gauge of how strong Gilgamesh is. In the Fate Zero light novel, it's stated that Gilgamesh's battle with Lancelot at the harbor was creating destruction equal to that of a carpet bomb. This is pretty impressive, as carpet bombs generally have around a city block level output. I want to bring some attention that this is definitely not the peak of how servants scale. Keep in mind that Gilgamesh and Lancelot were not trying their hardest in this battle, and the carpet bomb level destruction was simply an aftermath of them clashing. This isn't their max destructive capacity by a long shot. We can assume that servants actually have higher than city block level attack potency, as remember, this is just the mere shockwaves of their blades clashing, and on top of that, this was a fight that went on early in the Holy Grail War. Keep in mind that many servants will hold back their true power early on in the war, as to not reveal their true name or more or less just to feel out their opponent. This is very important for Gilgamesh, who tends to hold back a lot, basically based on arrogance. Somebody like Lancer from the 5th Holy Grail War was seen as relative to Archer in their first encounter, but when he actually tries later on in the Unlimited Bladeworks route, he's basically almost speed blitzing him. So I think that shows you the massive difference between their powers. Somebody like Saber, who actively goes out of her way to both hide away her true name and her true power, shows that when her sword is covered by something like an invisible air, it's over 10 times weaker. If we apply this 10 times multiplier to the city block level destruction we talked about earlier, we get around the multiple city block level range for a servant's average attack power. Though I'll say this is more of a baseline for servant's AP, and it basically just goes up from here. Gilgamesh fights this Saber with her sword revealed, and while she's nerfed in Fate route, he's basically toying with her and not trying much at all, so honestly he does scale to these multiple city block level ranges. As for his noble phantasm scaling, noble phantasms were stated that many uses of a noble phantasm could destroy an entire city. Many is more than 3 generally, so assuming that it would take at least 4 or more noble phantasms to destroy a city, this would generally put an output of a noble phantasm anywhere between large town and small city level. This is consistent, as in the Fate Unlimited Bladeworks anime, Archer's Khalid Bullock explosion was calculated being around small city level. Gilgamesh has nearly an infinite amount of noble phantasms stocked up within the Gate of Babylon. All of these do actually scale to Noble Phantasm's max level output, keeping in mind that Berserker stood in the middle of Khalid Bullock's explosion and took 0 damage, while in his fight with Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh was casually tearing through his God Hand defensive abilities, meaning every single one of Gilgamesh's launched swords should scale to this large town to small city level output as a minimum. As for Gilgamesh's speed, one of the most impressive speed feats in the early parts of the series is a feat done by Berserker, somebody Gilgamesh should scale to. In the fight with Saber in Fate route, one of the bad ends is when Saber launches an early Excalibur against Berserker, and he's able to bat away and deflect it. Keep in mind that Excalibur is stated numerous times to be a beam of light, and this was done from a relatively close distance of 10 to 20 meters. Berserker being able to react to and smack away this beam of light would put him at least in the relativistic ranges in terms of speed. In terms of Gilgamesh's arsenal, he has a plethora of weapons. So much so that I can't even list them all in this video. We don't even know all of the weapons in Gate of Babylon, just a handful that we see actually presented. So I'm just going to go over the ones that I think will be useful in this matchup. Most importantly, Calidbolg and Gaebolg. Calidbolg is a sword from Celtic myth. This sword is able to warp and distort space. When Archer fires it, it's able to twist and distort space, so much so that somebody like Castor couldn't even teleport away when it hit her. Other important weapons include Gaebolg and the Scythe of Perseus. These weapons negate regeneration and immortality and keep their opponent from healing. I do want to mention that Gilgamesh has weapons to deal with nearly every servant. It's stated by the author that Gilgamesh functions as almost an anti-servant servant, because he has the ability to exploit nearly all of their weaknesses. The most important weapon in Gilgamesh's arsenal is easily Ea. Ea is Gilgamesh's ultimate weapon and stated numerous times to be his strongest and most powerful attack. Even with its most casual outputs, it's able to completely tear away Excalibur. It is a weapon so unfathomably strong that Shiro just trying to comprehend it nearly kills him. The weapon is a metaphor for the Sumerian creation myth and has the ability to cleave through and distort space, even creating singularities. With Gilgamesh out of the way, it's about time we talk about the strongest sorcerer and the honored one himself, Gojo Satoru. The good thing about Gojo scaling is it's pretty easy, as you can basically just apply the entire verse's scaling to Gojo. He's stated to be the strongest basically every time he's mentioned, with the only comparable character in the entire verse being Sukuna. I want to mention something important when power scaling Gojo, which is two exemptions I'm holding from his scaling. For one is domain expansion scaling, as well as black hole scaling. For people who don't know the black hole feat, essentially a black hole is created by a lesser sorcerer in the story, and some people like to scale this to Gojo to give him large planetary level scaling. There's a lot of problems with this in my opinion. For one, this was a suicide attack, and one that is so much stronger than the rest of the verse that it's honestly more of an outlier if anything. As well as domain expansions, people say that people should scale to the domains just like active size. This is kind of strange because this would give people island to country level attack potency, and this level of power is kind of inconsistent and once again would be an outlier high end for the verse. If you want to give Gojo this domain expansion scaling, you could just do the inverse and give Gilgamesh reality marble scaling, and there's numerous times that like Unlimited Blade Works holds unlimited blades and thus would be universal. Obviously, these arguments kind of fall flat and kind of make the matchup less interesting. Getting on to Gojo's actual scaling, Gojo should massively upscale Jogo, who is able to summon a massive meteor that caused large town levels of destruction. We know this because during his fight with Jogo, not only did Jogo have his domain out, a meteor in his domain was easily lightly backfisted by Gojo and just dismantled. So even Gojo's base blue amped attacks should scale to these large town level ranges. We know from Kenjaku that Curse Technique Reversal Red is twice as strong as his output of blue, which would make it twice as strong as this Jogo feat hitting small city level. And obviously his strongest techniques like Hollow Purple would massively upscale this Reversal Red scaling. Speed in Jujutsu Kaisen is honestly a bit of a contentious topic, where some people believe that, they're only a little bit above sound, while other people believe they're the speed of light. It's honestly kinda debatable. I think the most consistent and for speed for Gojo is scaling him off of Hikari. During his battle, he was able to quickly react to lightning. While Hikari was still hit by it, he was able to move his head out of the way within this short time frame, which people generally get around Mach 22. Gojo's abilities are probably some of the most well known in modern anime, with his ability to control infinity. This comes in a couple of ways, and I'm going to go over the main ones now. He has a barrier that allows things that come at him to move slower and slower until they essentially stop moving altogether. He also has the ability Lapse Blue, which allows him to create a small black hole-like object to suck in things. He also can use this ability to move faster, amp his punches, as well as teleport. He also has the Reverse Curse Technique, which allows him to heal himself and even regenerate limbs. However, if his brain is damaged, he won't be able to use it. When using Curse Technique Reversal, he's able to generate Red, which is twice as strong as Blue. Red almost functions as like a key blasting projectile with high damage. His last three abilities are probably his most powerful, starting with the iconic Black Sparks, the Black Flash. Black Flashes are kind of inconsistent in the series. When someone's able to hit them or not kind of comes down to their mindset and honestly a little bit of luck. If someone lands a Black Flash, their output of their damage is increased by the power of 2.5. Gojo also has his imaginary technique, Hollow Purple. Hollow Purple is significantly stronger than Red, as Toji was able to block a Red when Gojo was young, while a Purple cleaves his body clean in half. Probably Gojo's most powerful technique in his arsenal is his domain expansion, Unlimited Void. Once in the Unlimited Void, Gojo can guarantee a hit on you, which generally comes in the form of putting infinite information within somebody's head. This makes them freeze up and go into a comatose-like state, where they're completely unable to defend themselves. With that out of the way, how does this matchup go? As for AP, they're actually quite close, with Gojo's ranges being generally, large town to small city, and that's the same range for Gilgamesh's Noble Phantasms being around large town to small city level. Gilgamesh has a massive advantage in terms of speed, however. He scales to Berserker, who can react to Excalibur, which gives him at least a percentage of the speed of light. However, Gojo only scales around vaguely above 20 times Mach speed. Durability-wise, Gojo has this category put down. Not only does Gilgamesh only have around multiple city block level durability, while Gojo has large town level. As for how their abilities stack up against each other, I will say that Gilgamesh is likely going to be able to adapt to Infinity. Infinity is weak to weapons, abilities that target space or distort space, and we know that Gilgamesh has Khalid Bolt, which is capable of doing so. I don't think it's a stretch to say that if Gilgamesh has at least one weapon capable of warping space, he likely has even more. Even when he fires a weapon, he can instantly return it to his Gate of Babylon and fire it again. Once Gilgamesh finds out how Infinity works, he's likely going to adapt to it and counter it accordingly. He does this same strategy with Berserker. Once he understands how God Hand works, he's able to change how he fires his Gate of Babylon to pierce through his God Hand armor. However, despite the massive speed advantage on Gilgamesh's part, Gilgamesh likes to sandbag most of his fights due to his arrogance. This I think allows Gojo to have an edge in terms of being able to stay in the fight. For as long as Gojo stands back, Gojo can use blue to draw away Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon weapons, as well as take potshots at him at range using Curse Technique Reversal Red. Currently it kinda looks like a stalemate. Any weapon that's bypassing Infinity is likely going to hurt Gojo, but Gojo will likely be able to regenerate it. So it's going to come down to the strongest techniques in both of their arsenals. For Gojo, that's Hollow Purple and Unlimited Void. Hollow Purple can definitely catch Gilgamesh lacking. Given the fact that Hollow Purple should massively outscale Red, there's a chance that Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon weapons won't be able to slow it down or stop it. He can honestly end up like Toji if he puts his guard down a little too much. However, given the massive speed advantage, there's also just a chance that, Gilgamesh doesn't get hit due to the speed gap. In terms of Unlimited Void, this is likely Gojo's best win con. Unlimited Void has 100% accuracy once you're in Gojo's domain, and if Gilgamesh gets hit by this, yeah, it's over. I'm not going to argue that Gilgamesh can withstand an infinite amount of information being chugged into his brain. If he does, he'll instantly become comatose and become food for Gojo to basically land a free shot and end the fight. I don't think Gojo has a chance to land a Black Flash in this matchup, as that would require him getting up close and personal with Gilgamesh, which I just don't see happening. Gilgamesh can open his portals to Gate of Babylon, up to hundreds of them, and from any angle he so chooses. He essentially gets to choose the range at which this battle is fought, and we know from experience that Gilgamesh likes his battles fought in that range. That being said, I don't really see Gojo being able to close the distance without being hit. It'll probably be better for Gojo to stay back, which means Black Flash is kind of a non-factor in this matchup. If Gilgamesh is arrogant throughout most of this fight, I gotta say that Gojo wins this. If Gilgamesh stays back and simply throws weapons from his Gate of Babylon thinking he has a massive advantage and not taking Gojo seriously, he could seriously be caught off guard by Unlimited Void. However, at any point Gilgamesh decides to get serious, this match completely turns on its head. Aya is single-handedly the biggest Gojo counter ever. Aya's main ability is to warp, cleave through, and distort space. Aya has an anti-world ranking in Noble Phantasms, which means it has one of the highest rankings in the entirety of the Nasuverse. Its target is essentially the world itself. For those who have read the manga, a weapon that both cleaves through space and targets the world is the direct counter to Infinity, meaning Gojo has no means to defend against something like this, especially since Enema Elish can essentially be fired from any range in any direction. Gojo's only option then would be pull out Unlimited Void. However, there is a big problem, and it's the fact that Enema Elish distorts domain spaces. In Gilgamesh's own verse, him pulling out Aya was able to collapse Iskander's reality marble, another EX ranked Noble Phantasm. Pulling out Aya destroys worlds and concepts itself, meaning it's heavily likely that it's going to disrupt Gojo's domain. We see in Jujutsu Kaisen that even small disruptions in domains, such as Fushiguro activating his domain within Dagon's, was able to stop Dagon's sure hit from activating. So if Aya is pulled out and Gojo tries to go for Unlimited Void will simply not work. The moment Aya is pulled out, Gilgamesh essentially has this fight in the bag. All Gilgamesh has to do is swing this weapon once, and the fight ends right there. So who's the victor in this matchup? Well, as unsatisfying as this is to say, it really depends on Gilgamesh's personality. Gilgamesh is extremely arrogant and will often underestimate his opponents, and if he underestimates Gojo too much, an Unlimited Void is likely to put him in an early grave. However, if he sees Gojo as a worthy threat at any point and pulls out Aya, Gojo's essentially dead from then on. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I'll try to post more power scaling content, and if you like Fate and Jujutsu Kaisen, leave requests for these kinds of characters in the comments below. I'll catch you guys later, and thanks for watching. Peace.